You cried over it, fought for it, prayed it would stay, but it still slipped through your hands, and maybe that was grace. Because not everything you lose is meant to break you. Some things leave so your future can finally breathe. God removes what you keep trying to revive. People, plans, comfort, versions of yourself that were never meant to cross into your next chapter. You're not being punished, you're being positioned. Sometimes the greatest growth begins with a goodbye you didn't want, but desperately needed. Let's stop pretending that loss always means failure. Let's stop assuming that what walked away was meant to be. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Some things had to fall apart, because you were building your life on what couldn't hold you. That relationship, that opportunity, that comfort zone, it served a season. But you were never supposed to settle there. You prayed for strength, so God took away your crutches. You prayed for clarity, so He removed the distractions. You prayed for growth, so He uprooted what was keeping you small. And it didn't feel like a miracle, it felt like a mess. Because when God starts to move, it rarely looks like blessing at first. It looks like separation. It looks like silence. It looks like you're being stripped down to nothing. But what if that emptiness you feel is just room being made for something greater? What if the things you lost weren't losses, but exits? Doors that needed to close, people who were meant to walk away, seasons that had to die so something new could live. The pain, real, the tears, valid, but the lesson, eternal. Not everything lost was meant to be kept, because what's meant for you won't need to be forced, chased, or rescued. It will align, it will fit, it will bring peace. So if it left, let it. If it broke, bless it. If it ended, release it. You're not falling apart, you're falling into alignment. And I know, it doesn't feel like it yet. You're still carrying pieces, still aching in places no one sees, still asking why. But listen closely. God never removes without purpose. He never subtracts unless He's about to multiply. And sometimes the only way to clear your path is to clear your hands. So don't mourn what's gone so long that you miss what's coming. Don't let your grief blind you to the grace that just showed up. You lost something, yes, but you didn't lose your calling. You didn't lose your identity. You didn't lose the God who's still writing your story. Some things had to leave, because the weight of them would have cost you the wings you were born to grow. Let them go. You're still becoming. Loss isn't always tragedy. Sometimes it's training. Everything you lose is not always a loss. We're conditioned to believe that if something ends, we failed. If someone walks away, we weren't enough. If the opportunity closes, we missed it. But what if the end wasn't a failure? What if it was a filter, a divine separation, a redirection, a pruning? Because sometimes you ask God for strength, and He gives you disruption. He removes the relationships that were secretly draining your identity. He breaks the plans that were built on fear, not faith. He strips away the applause, the comfort, the control, so you can finally grow into something real. But it hurts, doesn't it? It hurts when the phone stops ringing, when the doors you were excited about slam shut without warning, when the people you gave your loyalty to vanish when you need them most. And yet, that's when your real self starts to surface, when the noise dies down, when the fake love disappears, when your hands are empty and you've got nothing left but grit, prayer, and breath. That's where transformation lives, because God's not in the business of convenience. He's in the business of calling. And your calling? It doesn't grow in ease, it grows in exits. The exits of people who couldn't handle your next level. The exits of comfort that was killing your creativity. The exits of old mindsets that couldn't survive the storms ahead. Every time you cried over what left, heaven was quietly clearing the way. Every time you questioned the ending, God was constructing the beginning. But you couldn't see it yet, because beginnings often feel like breakdowns. That's the test. Will you trust that what's leaving your life is making space for what you prayed for? Or will you grip the past so tightly that you suffocate your own potential? This is where many people get stuck. They think growth means gaining more. But real growth? It often starts with losing what no longer serves you. And not because you're being punished, but because your future can't afford to carry your past. So stop calling it a setback. Start calling it what it really was: training, alignment, refinement. The exit wasn't the end. It was the evidence that your next chapter is coming. And this time, you're walking in lighter, stronger, wiser, and finally ready. Some people were lessons, not lifelines. Outgrowing people you thought were permanent. Some people came into your life like sunshine, but stayed like shadows. They once felt like home. Now they feel like a weight. And the scariest part? You thought losing them would break you, but now that they're gone, you can finally breathe. So, not everyone is meant to go where you're going. Some people were only there to show you something, a flaw you needed to fix, a boundary you needed to build, a standard you needed to raise. They weren't lifelines, they were lessons. But because we crave connection, because we fear loneliness, we try to force expired people into a future they don't have the heart to support. And then we wonder why we feel drained, why we're stuck, why our dreams feel too heavy. It's not always because you're weak. It's because you're carrying people who were supposed to be released, not rescued. Let that sink in. Because not all love is loyal, and not all presence is partnership. Just because someone stood beside you doesn't mean they were for you. Some cheered for the version of you that stayed small, the version that made time for their drama, their needs, their ego. But the moment you started evolving, the silence grew louder, the support disappeared, and you took that personal. You asked yourself, what did I do wrong? You replayed the conversations, the texts, the memories, but you missed the truth. Their absence was the answer. God didn't remove them because you were wrong. He removed them because you were right. Right to grow, right to heal, right to walk forward, even if it meant walking alone. You knew something felt off for a while. You just didn't want to believe it. You held on, hoping they'd change. You kept showing up, even when they stopped. You watered dead plants, hoping they'd bloom again. Closure doesn't always come with a conversation. Sometimes it comes in the form of distance, silence, or doors that won't reopen. And that's okay, because elevation requires separation. You can't fly carrying anchors. You can't soar surrounded by weight. You can't fulfill your calling if you're still clinging to connections that conflict with your purpose. So no, not everyone was meant to stay. And that's not a tragedy. That's God making room for what's next. When plans break, purpose begins. Sometimes what hurts the most isn't who walked away. It's the version of your life you were counting on. The blueprint, the timeline, the dream you carried since childhood. You planned the future down to the details. And then one by one, those pieces started slipping away. You were going to graduate by this year, be married by this age, have it all together by now. But nothing looks like what you pictured. And in the quiet moments, you can't help but feel like you missed something, like you messed it all up. But I need you to hear this loud and clear. You didn't miss it. God rerouted you. Because your plan? It was limited by what you could see. But His purpose? It's built on what only He knows. And sometimes the only way to reveal that purpose is to let your plan fall apart. It's hard to accept, I know. You prayed for stability, and now you're standing in pieces. You wanted direction, and now you're walking in silence. But this is exactly where transformation begins, because comfort doesn't change you. Disruption does. The job that ended, it made space for creativity you didn't know you had. The door that slammed shut, it pointed you to a hallway you never would have found on your own. We want clarity, but sometimes God offers construction instead, and construction is messy. It tears down before it builds up. It rips apart the old to make room for the new. It makes you question everything, not to destroy you, but to deepen you. So when your plans fall apart, pause. Look again. Ask yourself, what is God making room for in my life? Because it's often in the moments when nothing makes sense that the deepest sense of purpose begins to rise, but only if you stop clinging to the old blueprint. Because that version of life you wanted, it wasn't big enough. It wasn't deep enough. It didn't require the version of you God is building through this storm. So bless the broken plans, honor the disappointment, but don't get stuck there, because what's ahead was always greater than what you had in mind. Who you were isn't who you're becoming. Sometimes what you lose isn't on the outside, it's internal. You don't just lose people or plans, you lose pieces of yourself. And that's where the real battle begins. You start to feel unfamiliar in your own skin. The things that used to excite you feel empty. The conversations that once energized you now drain you. The identity you once wore with pride no longer fits. And you start asking questions like, what's wrong with me? Why don't I feel like myself anymore? Why do I feel so lost. But maybe that feeling of being lost isn't a mistake. Maybe it's a signal, a divine disruption. Because in order to become who you were born to be, you must first release who you were conditioned to be. That version of you that always said yes, just to keep peace. That version that dimmed your light to stay likable. That version that chased validation instead of vision. It had to go, because your calling can't rest on a character you're only pretending to be. You don't grow into your purpose by clinging to an expired identity. You grow into it by shedding layers of fear, approval, people-pleasing, and pain. That shedding? It's painful, it's lonely, it's confusing, because nobody claps when you let go of the version of yourself they were most comfortable with. Nobody celebrates when you stop performing and start becoming. But that's the price of alignment. It's the price of evolution. You're not meant to stay the same. You're meant to become, again and again. And with every layer you drop, you rise a little higher. Because the real you, the one hidden under the survival mode and silence, that version is powerful, purpose-driven, and dangerous to every limitation ever placed on your life. So don't be afraid of outgrowing who you used to be. Celebrate it. That's not a crisis. It's confirmation, proof that you're finally stepping into alignment with the person God always knew you could be. Let go of who you were. Honor who you've been. But don't you dare settle there. There's more, and it's waiting on the other side of release. You didn't lose yourself. You outgrew the old version of you. You didn't lose time. You gained clarity. You didn't lose people. You made space for peace. You didn't lose the plan. You stepped into something bigger. What you thought was punishment was really protection. What felt like abandonment was God's redirection. Not everything lost was meant to be kept, because what is meant for you will never leave you confused, drained, or stuck. It will align, it will build, it will flow. So release the weight. Forgive yourself for the things that didn't work out. Stop begging for doors that God himself shut for a reason. There is more ahead than you left behind, but you'll never touch it with your fist full of the past. Let it go. Walk forward, not bitter, not broken, but bold, wiser, calmer, stronger. Because the only thing that truly left was what couldn't carry the next version of you, the healed you, the focused you, the elevated, chosen, aligned you. So lift your head, square your shoulders, and walk with peace into your next season, because what's coming will remind you why everything had to leave, and this time, you won't chase it, you'll receive it.